Hello everyone, welcome to the Creative Cove. My name is Michelle and thanks so much for joining me today. So I picked this up at the dump. Like I said before, we have this little section in our dump, local dump, that recycles goods. So anything worth reusing, they'll put in there and you can just take it. So I love it because you get some really fun stuff there. Picked up a few things I'll be doing some videos with. So this piece is probably about, I'm going to say about 3 feet by 1.5 feet wide. Keep Calm and Party On is probably a little dated for me. I don't party on so much. Bedtime's more like at 9 o'clock at night now. So I will be painting over this, but it's in great shape. I'm just going to give it a clean. Just some soap and water, get off any grease and grime, and we'll go from there. I'm going to paint, I think, trees on this. I want something dark and moody. I'm into the greens, the deep greens right now for my home. Like I said in previous videos, I'm slowly accumulating some decorative pieces, and I think this will be a great piece to repaint. Some soapy hot water here. Let's give it a quick wash. So here I have my palette, and it's a very messy palette. It's used all the time, and some several colors put out here, and I'll try and list them below. I use Golden brand primarily, but there is a couple of other cheapy colors on there that I use just to use up. So here I'm using my black, which is Carbon Black by Golden. It's a beautiful black. I love it. And I'm just slapping on the painting I want to do. I'm not going to bother covering the background or painting over the old sign. I'm just going to go straight into it. So the painting I want to do today is one of these really beautiful eastern pines that we have here. I have lots of them in my backyard and I just love them. Every time I look at them, they have something new to offer. The way their branches are molded in the wind, and they're very sensitive to wind. But they're very old and they have these really heavy limbs. We call them widow makers when they fall down because they'll kill you. They're huge and they're heavy. They're deceivingly heavy. But they have such character, these trees, and I really love painting them. But I'm going to approach it a little bit differently today than I normally paint. This time I'm going to be painting foreground and background at the same time. I want to kind of have a very muted transition between the foreground and background, and you'll see what I mean by that when I start to get into the background colors. Right now I'm just taking my black and I'm feeling out a composition. I'm feeling out the weight of the branches, the direction of the branches. You're going to see that it will change. I'm going to show you a few tips that you can apply here. So when I teach painting, I don't want you to think that you have to paint this specific way. This is just a video on how I approach things with some tips and ideas that might improve your paintings. You know, maybe something maybe you haven't thought of yet. And you can paint along with me. I would love that. This, again, is an extremely loose approach here. This is almost an abstract, semi-abstract transition of a tree onto canvas here. And, sorry, onto a wood board. This is a wood panel, really, not canvas, so it's very hard surface. But the idea behind this video is for you to see how loose you can paint and move your brush strokes quickly, play with color, and achieve, you know, what I would consider a fine art painting. It's all about how your style and discovering your style. And this can take years, or this can just happen overnight. You're just going to grab your brush and hold it the way you hold it. You're going to be a little nervous putting paint down, and that's what I want to break the barrier of today. I don't want you to be afraid to paint. I want you just to go for it. And I'm going to show you how forgiving acrylic paint can be in this process, how easily you can change something. And the idea behind this painting is just be fearless. Grab colors that appeal to you. You know, you like purples and oranges, you like pinks and greens. go for it. That's the color palette I want you to put out here. You are going to need black and white, and I would recommend a good quality of paint if you're going to put a lot of effort into this. If you're going to take the time and really discover acrylic painting through this process, then grab some good quality paints and let's have some fun with this. So again, I'm just sketching it out with my paintbrush. I didn't pre-draw anything. I just want to sketch and get an overall vibe and feel for this tree and an overall composition throughout the whole canvas itself. So now I'm content with my overall composition of how the tree sits on the canvas. I'm going to start playing with color here. So you'll see I didn't even wait for the tree to dry. I'm just scooped up with some blue and some white. I'm not going to go over all the color scoops that I do. Unfortunately, my camera's set up. I can't fit the palette in and the tree because the canvas is too big. And you're going to use your own colors anyways. I don't want you to paint the exact same thing. It will never happen. I want you to pick up the colors that appeal to you. So here I am, what I call messy paint. This is one of my favorite parts of painting, is where I literally dip in another color, and just smudge it all over the background. I don't pre-mix my colors, and that's why I talk about your style of painting. You might want to pre-mix your colors. You might be the kind of person who has it meticulously all figured out exactly how you're going to paint this tree. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. We all have our own styles and our comfort zones and what we think works for us. But again, this is something I would love for you to try. Just scoop up those colors and throw them on the background and see how much range of color compositions you can get. You're going to want to start with maybe some lighter colors. So like I said, my approach today is I want something busy. I want a lot of movement in my painting, and I want a moodiness to it. I want it to feel almost like the sun is setting or the sun is just rising, and it's those cool tone, rich fall colors that I love without using the traditional fall colors of orange and yellows and reds. So this is a more of a greenier, grainier type painting. So again, just playing in, filling it in, not upset if it grabs the black and gets dark, gets the color muddy. It's just part of the process. I'm what I call feeling out my painting. And this is all going to change again. You're going to see I do color after color, and that's what's the beauty about acrylic paint, is it really is about layering color over top of more color. And your painting, you'll find every time I paint anyways, a painting, it goes through this really ugly phase where you almost start doubting yourself. But I've gone through it so many times now, I no longer doubt myself. I just persevere and push through the ugly, what I call the ugly phase. And that's just before the final details go on, really. So this is just feeling out the colors. Do I want to go with a brighter blue into a dark blue? Do I want to go into a yellow into a green? I'm just going to mute the colors around. I don't move to a bigger brush because I want a busy background. You could move to a bigger brush. I only really use 2 brushes in this. I did grab a bigger brush at one point, but I didn't like it, so I stuck to this medium-sized brush, and I think I show it close up in a minute of how pretty small this brush is for such a size canvas. But I am a fast painter. I've always been a fast painter. It's just, again, part of my style. I'm comfortable when I'm moving fast until I work the details. And you can see already this softening of the background and the foreground mixed together. That black background is starting to soften around the edges as I throw in this color on top. So I sped up the video there obviously a little bit, and I'm just going to show here how I fill in the rest of the color. And you'll see as I move further down the painting, I start to go a little bit darker. Now again, bearing in mind, this will all change. I'll lighten things up, I'll add in branches. This is just step by step here, phases that these acrylic paintings transition through. So I'm just gonna throw on the acrylic paint here, play with the color, and fill in the background. Now you'll see obviously this is sped up, but my brush really never stops. I just dunk into a color and go for it. I don't want to overthink it. I find as an artist, when I stop and really overthink things, I start to second guessing myself as well. I have a vision in my head of how I think this is going to turn out. Probably only 40% of what I visualize actually transitions to a painting, but it gives me a guideline in my brain as to how I put the colors down and how I pick colors and things like that. But they rarely turn out how I see them in my brain. And that's one of the other things I love about acrylic painting is you never know what you're going to get in the end. And I really love that. I do end up leaving this little corner here empty because you can see my tripod is on there. And I'm painting this painting sideways so that the whole thing can fit in the screen, in case you're wondering why you're looking at this sideways the whole time. So I'm putting some black back in. So now I'm moving to the foreground, putting some black in and revamping some of my limbs. I feel like some of them are maybe a little too thin. I'm widening up the trunk, making sure that the trunk is thick enough to hold the weight of these heavy branches. And I'm going to work back and forth in this one, like I mentioned before, from foreground to background. When that might be difficult for some painters, you might want to strategize how you're going to do the background and then do the foreground. So at this stage, you can see it's still very messy, which is fine. It's a development. I go from light color down to darker. And now I want to put in some highlights inside the tree itself, inside the branches, just to help me visualize the shape of the branches that are going to take place later in the painting. And this also helps me determine how much lighter my background needs to go. So just playing with a little bit of highlight here, and you can see how it helps me overall visualize the shape and form of the branches. And I don't do it to all of them, I just do it to some, so that in my brain I can see how this shape of the tree is going to slowly develop. So now that I've started to put some darker colors, highlighted colors in the tree, it's now helping me try to figure out what it is I want for contrast. Do I want to go super bright in the background and really pop the foreground? This is where your artistic interpretation comes to life. You can go with really vivid colors here. You can go with dark colors and really have a super moody, almost abstract painting where you can barely see the tree. I want to have certain parts of the tree pop forward. I want to bring out some details later in these branches, and then I want some of the tree to be subdued. And I think that range really adds some interest to a painting. And again, depending on the style of painting, we haven't even talked about a style yet, really. I mentioned this was going to be kind of semi-abstract. You can do as realistic as you like. You can do as abstract as you like. You know, you can really just have fun playing with your colors and your paintbrushes. So here I'm just switching hands because my hand does get tired. This is still obviously in fast forward. It's a time-consuming thing. Even though I'm a fast painter, this painting overall took me, I think, an hour and 15 minutes to paint. That's including the black sides that I paint later. So I am a fast painter. I'm not putting tons of detail into this tree. I just want to capture the mood of this tree, if that makes sense. So you can see I'm going in with some lighter colors here, which is making the darker color in the back, the foreground, sorry, the tree itself pop forward. So when I say background, it's obviously behind the tree. When I say foreground, I'm talking about the tree or anything that I end up painting in front of the tree, which I do later. So you can see I changed the shape when I painted the background there. So now I think, okay, I've kind of distorted the top of the tree. I'm going to put the top of the tree back in. And that's what's beautiful about acrylics, is they're so forgiving. You have the opportunity to completely transform this painting and just going back and forth. That's what I love about acrylics. So now I've got the background completely done, not finished, but painted in. I'm going to add some red here. I want to start introducing some warm color for the trunk. And I will list those reds down below. I can't remember the top of my head, the name of those colors doing the voiceover, but I will make sure that I add them to the description box. This part I slowed back down again. I wanted to show you how fun acrylic paint is by doing this. So I've established right now where my tree trunk is going to go, but you can see I've got a branch coming across the front here, and how simple it is to change that by running the trunk through the front. So now what I've done is by putting that red trunk in front, I have officially pushed that branch behind the trunk. Can you see how fun that is? Just by determining, hey, maybe I want this in front, maybe I want this in back. So that branch I want in front of the trunk. So I'm going to put the red behind it. And on top of it, I'm going to throw a little bit of red throughout just to indicate some branches. Again, this is going to change. Remember, it's all about layering. I'm going to throw in some branches down the bottom here. So now I've got way too much tree trunk down the bottom, and watch how easily I can bring a branch to the front of the tree again. Just by throwing in that shape, I've now created some form and dimension by putting a branch that's coming towards me, as well as pushing one on the other side on the back end of the tree. So you can see how simple acrylic is to manipulate. You can't really do this in oil, and you definitely can't do it in watercolor. This is how forgiving acrylics are and how much fun they are to play with. I hope this gives you some ideas and inspiration on how to use acrylic paints, but most of all, take the intimidation away and just really just slap the paint down and have a good time with it. And go back and forth. Some things maybe work for you right away, and maybe some things don't. So I'm doing the same thing here with the branch, where depending where I put the dark color, I'll push the branch behind, and where I put the red color, I'll put the branch in front. And you can see how instantly these things change and how you can develop the painting. So now I'm going to start putting in a little bit of highlights inside the branches again. I'm going to go with a brighter value this time, just so I can see, again, the contrast between the foreground and the background. So you see, as I'm putting the lighter color at the bottom here, it pops a lot more than it does at the top, and that's simply because the background is the same value. So I need to play with this until I get the overall contrast that I'm looking for. And I want to also kind of play with color too. Do I want the tree more blue? Do I want the tree more green? And there's a lot of back and forth here. This is, again, my style of painting, so it uses up a lot of paint because I do go back and forth a lot when other artists might have all their colors picked out and ready to go. I like to discover as I go. That's just the way I paint, and I've always been like that. So now I'm going to tone down the value that I put in. Is a little too bright, so I'm going to dumb it down a little bit with some darker. I've added black to that color I was just using basically, and I'm just going to tone it down a little bit, and then I'll probably move to my background and figure out what color I want to brighten it with. So here I'm going to start adding in some brighter color. I'm really loving this yellow, and I really love the warmth that it offers against this cooler blue tones that I've been using. So I'm going to start throwing those in with a little bit of white here and there, with a little bit of blue, and just really have fun. And still using that relatively small brush for this size canvas. And I'm going to start creating a little cloud formations. Not accurate cloud formations, just some interest, some visual texture and movement in the background. One of the things I love about these trees is their shapes and forms. And I think they've got this kind of natural movement throughout them that I try to capture. And I want the background to be just as interesting as the foreground. So I'm going to play back and forth with some pale blues, some yellows, just to build up some interest in this background. So now that I've built up my background a little bit, I'll go back to my foreground and start playing with a lighter value and see if I'm still happy with it. Do I want to pop it more? Do I want to subdue it? And I'll play back and forth like this throughout the rest of the painting. Again, not only playing with the contrast and value of the paint, but also experimenting with the colors. Do I want it warmer? Do I want it colder? Do I want more texture? Do I want it more subtle? And just really having fun building up the shapes of these branches. So here I'm going to put in a little bit more warmth into the painting. And then as soon as I did that, I realized the value of the sky and the value and the color actually of the branches was the exact same, and everything gets lost. So I don't want that. So now I'm going to subdue that color again by adding a little bit of black and toning it down a little bit. It also kind of makes things a little bit muddy, which sometimes I like the muddy look and sometimes I don't. But I think what really appeals to me with this muddy color is the sharpness of the black underneath poking through. I really love that contrast. So I'm going to build up that darker value back up and again work back and forth until I get the desired look that I want. So I switched to a smaller brush here because I want to put in some details. I find I've got some really interesting things happening in the background, and now I want to put some of that texture into the foreground. So the tree is far away. You're not going to see little individual pine needles, but what you are going to see is overall shadows and shapes of these big, massive branches. And what I like to do here is put in different colors. So right now I'm using blue throughout. And next will be probably a lighter value of yellow or green to start popping some of the highlights, some of the bright spots that the sun is hitting on these branches. So when you're doing this, what you want to do is you want to put sections of this on, but you don't want to cover all the other work that you've done. You don't want to paint so much highlight on it that you've lost all the contrast color underneath. And that at one point here, I realized I've probably either put too much or the value's too bright and I don't like it. So then I'll take the color and subdue it down or wipe it off with my tissue paper. And that's the beauty of acrylic again, is you just keep working at it till you get what you like. And this will change again because one of the things I did after I did this section was I realized that the tree became too busy for me. It was competing a little bit too much against the busyness of the background. So I end up muting it down by doing bigger brush strokes. But this, even though it changes, this phase is important. It's important to go through these phases, even though you'll end up changing the painting again. This is how you discover your style of how you like to paint. And to how to play with value and contrast. One of the fun techniques to discover how to figure out if you've got a good value is to take your camera and take a black and white picture of your painting. And if it's all the same kind of gray, then you know you don't have a high enough contrast. So then you want to use some darker and lighter colors, values in your colors. So I'm just popping some black back in because, like I said, I felt like I overdid it. It got a little too busy. And I could have edited all this out, but I want to show you how easy it is to go back and forth on acrylic paintings. How you can overdo a section, but just go right back in it and fix it. And I just love that about acrylics. It's a lot about feeling painting for me. I feel my way through a painting. Like I said, I have a visual in my head, and then I just work the painting until I'm satisfied. Now I'm putting in some warmer greens. I feel like the painting got a little too cold. The tree got a little too cold, and I want to warm it back up again by putting some of this kind of army colored green in. And it will probably change again. Just want to do a quick close-up here on how to paint a branch. A lot of people do this where they just glue the branch to the tree, but you got to remember that a branch actually grows from the tree. So you want to create those nice little curves and pull outs like this. And as you move away, it gets thinner. So the new growth is thinner than the growth by the tree. I also like to put these little kinks in my branches. I call them little elbows. And that's where other branches might grow from. So I'm just throwing a few in here. I'm also right now painting with my left hand. I usually paint with my right, but I'm holding the camera here. And I just want to show you a lot of people really do glue their branches to their tree, and it's important that they grow out. Okay, so I just wanted to demo that, so I'm just going to quickly erase this branch. And as you can see, you can easily manipulate any changes you want to make. So I'm just going to blend that back out to the background and keep working on this painting. So here I decided to add a little bit more brightness to the foreground. I found it a little bit dark at the bottom and a little almost too predictable going from light to dark. So I wanted to add a bit more foreground to the painting. So this is kind of like a little piece of land that pops up in front of this tree. So I'm going to use some lighter yellows and blues and greens in here and just create a little bit more of a visual interest into the front of the tree. I'm just going to putter at building up the shapes of these branches a little bit as well. So unfortunately in this video, you really can't see the true nature of these acrylic paintings. It looks a little washed out right now because of the bright lights in my living room. The final video of it hanging on the wall, you get a little bit more of an idea of the true colors of the painting. It's a lot moodier than this, a lot more saturated in color. So greens and yellows are more vibrant than they look right now. It's a little overexposed, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight through here and just paint along. And I hope you're still watching me. I hope you watch how this painting kind of all comes together. And I hope you grab your paintbrushes and paint with me. So here I'm going to add a little bit of a thin wash to the painting. So I've added a bit of water to my paint, and then I just kind of dab it off and wipe it off. You can let it sit a little longer. And all it does is creates this thin wash of color that sits on top of the original color. And you can see it just kind of softens it just a little bit. So it doesn't, you don't have to repaint everything. It's another technique. You can use all kinds of techniques to do this, but this little wash is one of my favorites. And it's really fun to use in other ways to subdue colors behind it, but still let them shine through underneath. And I'm just gonna give the base here a little bit of more of a highlight. I feel it's a little too soft. Maybe bring some of that warm yellow back down. So the front of the painting is finished, and just going to slap on some black paint on the outer edge of this old board here. You can use any color you like. Your painting, your decision. Okay, so it's been hung up where I want it. Yes, I still have no trim on my doors and windows. We're still building. But I'm really pleased with how it turned out. It's a nice piece, and as you can see through the windows and doors there is a lot of these trees out back, and I think it fits in this little section really nicely. So I do hope that this video gives you some inspiration on painting your own little beautiful, happy paintings, moody paintings, whatever it is you might want to paint, and kind of taking the fear out of painting and just having fun with colors that you love, subject matter that you love, and just really going to town on an old board that I got from the dump. So there you go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please share and give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.